Hello. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the December edition of our ComfyUI event. And thank you for joining us at the end of the year. I know things are busy with holidays and travel, so I'm very grateful you could make it out to our space. This is ZeroSpace. It is a production studio, creative agency, and innovation lab, all sort of rolled up into one. We do a lot of work with ComfyUI, and our background is sort of in 3D rendering, game development, real-time animation, and filmmaking. So we're super excited to host these events and bring the community here to discuss what you can do with ComfyUI, and I hope you all enjoy the event tonight. Little house rules, bathrooms are in the back over there past the big door opening. We have food and drinks over there. And I will pass it to Eric, who is our co-host of the event, and he'll give a little bit of a end-of-year wrap-up.
Thanks. Thank you, Shalom. Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Thank you all for being here. Yeah, I'm Eric, and we've been doing the ComfyUI Meetup in New York for about a year. Actually, last December was our very first ComfyUI Meetup, and we've gone from 10 people at a little office conference room to now hosting this amazing event at this awesome, beautiful space. So I think it's been a really incredible year for open source AI and especially for ComfyUI and this project. So we've also gotten a lot of sponsors this year, which has been new. So companies like LTX Lightricks and Alibaba Wen and Oxen AI have all been supporting us, and of course ZeroSpace hosting the event. So really grateful of their support. And if anybody is interested in sponsoring, definitely come and talk to me afterwards. And if you look at ComfyUI, the ComfyUI ecosystem this year, it's been a pretty incredible year. Like, we all know how fast creative AI has improved this year. Just some high-level improvements to reflect. At the beginning of the year, ComfyUI was still very much just forming as a company, right? Like, there was a ton of tech debt. So I think one of the first things that the Comfy team really focused on was getting the registry really in place and solving some of the biggest pain point of dependency management. We're still not through it, and in fact, we'll hear an awesome talk later today about a cool solution for dependency management. But I think having that node registry kind of enshrined a little bit has really removed a lot of headache for people. And of course, later in the year, we had Comfy Cloud, right? So now we finally have a solution that you can use without having a local GPU, which and I think is also going to be important for professional usage in a team environment where you have multiple artists collaborating on the same project. There's been just so many cool open source AI models that have come out, right? Starting the year with Wen and Hunyuan, and now we had Wen 2.2, to the most recent release, Z Image Turbo, which has been taking over the zeitgeist. And of course, we also had Quinn Image was still very popular, Flux 2.0, right? Like, all of these models are just incredible in its performances in terms of image editing, image generation, controllability, right? It's really like, if you want controllability, there's really no tool that even comes close to Comfy, right? So I think that has only gotten better over the year. And it was a pretty interesting moment in the middle of the year when ChatGPT came out with their image model, and the Comfy community was kind of concerned, right? I remember this was at the announcement kind of happened right when the Comfy conference was happening in Shanghai, and everyone was like, "Oh no! Like, all of these workflows that the community has been working on is completely useless now with the open AI models. What are we going to do?" And I think if we look back 6 months later, like the open source models have only gotten better, and we're only able to do more things now. And that kind of, knee-jerk reaction of, proprietary model is going to come and eat Comfy's lunch has not come true, which I think is really, really cool to see. And of course, talking about proprietary models, I think a really fun thing really smart thing that Comfy did was to have API nodes in the environment. So now you can kind of have the best of both worlds, right? You can use all the best open, proprietary models as well, like Nano Banana and Kling and VO3. They're all in the same environment, so that allows professional users to really build out workflows, not just for media generation, but also like real workflow management for like managing assets and moving assets around. And finally, I think we're starting to see some pretty cutting edge things that is coming to Comfy because it's open source. And the pace of innovation around the edge of media generation in Comfy has been really interesting to see. As an example, if you were here last month, Phil came and gave a talk about a ComfyUI agent that he's been working on that allows you to kind of use an LLM to build out a Comfy workflow. And so, LLM, like we're starting to see, LLM innovations coming into this ecosystem. We're starting to see a lot of tools integration coming into the ecosystem. People are using Comfy in combination with Blender, with Unreal, with these other like really popular creative tools. Later tonight we're gonna see a talk about using Comfy with some real-time video AI models that are in another tool called Scope, which I think is another good example of that. So a bit of a wrap-up of the year. There's been just so many exciting things that's happened in the ecosystem. I think I'm really excited to see what next year brings. And with that said, I want to give it to Sherlong to introduce our first speaker.
Well said, Eric. I will just reflect on the year as well and say that it's been a pleasure to collaborate on these events with Livepeer and really appreciate the contributions that Livepeer and Eric and the rest of the Livepeer team have done to make this event series happen and continue bringing these amazing speakers and programming to you here in New York. So let's give a round of applause for Eric as well. It is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker tonight. Yandan Fu is a co-founder and leading research at Livepeer. Today he'll be talking about workflows for real-time visual prototyping using ComfyUI and Scope, which is a new tool developed by Livepeer for running and customizing real-time interactive generative AI pipelines. So we've heard a lot of buzz recently about the idea of a world model and of real-time video AI generation. And so I'm really excited to hear Yandan Fu give some background and updates on that. Would you please welcome Yandan?
All right, can everyone hear me okay before I get started? Cool, thank you for the thumbs up. So thank you for the introduction, and as Sherlong mentioned, today I'm gonna talk about, well, originally I was gonna have this be a more general presentation about real-time visual prototyping, one with ComfyUI, and two with Scope, which is a tool which I'll talk about momentarily. As I started preparing the presentation, it ended up becoming a little bit more specific, and really I'm going to be talking a lot more about real-time visual character prototyping, because that was a personal interest of mine, especially as someone that doesn't have a traditional 3D background. I was very interested in, what could I put together if I wanted to just really quickly prototype what some very basic character animation and character styles could look like. So that'll be the overall theme. It's very much focused on visual prototyping, but centered around characters for today. So before jumping into it, where does this story begin? And for me, I think it really starts with this project, Stream Diffusion, which is a project that many of you here might be familiar with. I think it came out maybe 1 or 2 years ago. And the general idea behind stream diffusion was that, well, we know how to generate images. What if we can generate images really, really fast? And what if instead of just generating images, we can transform incoming stream of images in any way that we would like? So this project became really popular. And I think one of the most interesting things that people tried was trying to apply stream diffusion in order to, in real time, restyle and basically edit visually an existing stream of video. So this is something that someone from the Daydream community, a community that's very much focused on experimentation with these types of real-time workflows, had done previously, where they took a real-time render of a character within Unity, and also took a real-time depth map render of that same character in Unity, and then passed it through stream diffusion in an attempt to see what would look like if you started off with something a little bit more coarse, a little bit more basic, and then relied on this model as a sort of real-time visual assistant in order to help you prototype different visual ideas. So it was cool, it was novel, but as you can see, it leaves a little bit to be desired on the temporal consistency front. So you see a lot of flickering, and while you can try a lot of these different styles, you don't really have a lot of temporal coherence from frame to frame. So a little bit challenging for actual prototyping purposes, but still very impactful and very cool to have this in the first place. Fast forward a year or two, and now we're kind of seeing the next wave of models and research work that moves beyond that original stream diffusion work. So this slide doesn't intend to be comprehensive, but it just is listing out some of the recent open source and academic releases and commercial releases that we've seen. So we have the successor to Stream Diffusion V2. We have LongLive, which is a model that was created primarily from the NVIDIA folks in collaboration with a few other academics. We have reward forcing, and then most recently, the company Krea actually released some of their research work on creating real-time video models as well. I won't go into all of the nitty-gritty technical details of what the difference between, say, Stream Diffusion V1 and these models are, but I think the most important thing to understand is that at its core, Stream Diffusion V1 was really about doing image generation super, super fast. And that can work, but without having, think of it as a form of memory, then it's hard to maintain temporal coherence if you have no idea what happened in the past. So this wave of research, including all of these projects on this slide, also encompasses some of these bigger, more hyped up announcements like Genie 3 from Google. This wave of research is centered around addressing that exact problem and more, where instead of just treating everything as individual standalone image that you're transforming, you're actually perceiving this stream of pixels and then building up a memory of what you've seen in the past and using that to then predict, hey, what should the next frame look like? If I saw an apple start to wobble on a tree, it should probably fall in the next frame. So the fundamental idea that these wave of models is built on is incorporating that type of causality. So you'll hear terms like causal models, you'll hear terms like autoregressive models, but at the end of the day, it's really just about predicting the next frame based on your understanding and memory of every frame that you've seen thus far. So that starts to bring us a little bit closer to some of the fun experiments that we've been running recently. So Scope is this open source tool that we released, I'd say, like two and a half months ago. And it very much at the beginning, and to an extent today still is, oriented around making sense of all of this research. So we have new models coming out every week sometimes, and at the very beginning, the intent here was wanting to have a single place where any of these models and new pipelines can be tried out, knowing that they're only going to get better over time. And this is less about having the de facto best one and more about, hey, how can we just understand the rate of progress here and start to understand what you can actually try to do with these models. So this is a short video of what Scope looks like today and the user interface. So this is demonstrating real-time video to video, where on one side we have the driving video of the cat, and then in real time we can restyle it in any way that we want using the text prompts over on the left. So we can transition from this panda to, in the next couple frames, this dog, to at the very end we transition to a lizard. And you'll note that while it's not perfect, we are able to do better with temporal coherence here, much better than Stream Diffusion v1 and previous generation of models, mainly because now we actually have this sense of memory from frame to frame. So when I prompt it to generate something in a new style, it can actually understand, hey, I've been seeing these set of frames that represent, say, the silhouette of this cat, and I can basically remix that successfully and have that maintain coherence from frame to frame. So the beginning of this journey, and then I'll get to the ComfyUI portions momentarily, was, okay, we have some of these models now. What are some of the fun things we can do with it? So what I'll show in this demo is actually another application, Touch Designer, which some of you might be familiar with. And my goal here was, can I use Touch Designer to basically manipulate an incoming pre-recorded video and then in real time restyle that using the models available in Scope, so that I can, on one hand, restyle the video in real time using Scope, but on another hand, use Touch Designer for what Touch Designer is good at, which is a lot of these other, call it glue and scaffolding that comes with real-time media. So what I'll show here is the real-time restylization, and then also being able to do things like compositing and swapping out the background. Let me actually play this. So what I have here is a workflow where in this particular node, this is going to be the driving video, this avatar that's moving back and forth with a blurred background. And what I'll do is I'm going to use this software called Spout, which allows me to basically share frames between Touch Designer and Scope. And I'm going to send this driving video of this avatar into Scope, and then basically play back the restyled avatar in Touch Designer. So I'll pause here. What I'm using under the hood here is the Stream Diffusion v2 model, and I'm using it along with a LoRa, a style LoRa, that is trained off of the artwork of Arcane. So the intent here is, can I take this base avatar and then see, hey, what would this look like if it was the character Jinx from Arcane moving around instead? Not to get a perfect shot, but just to get a sense of the aesthetics, get a feel for it. So that's exactly what I'm showing here, and we're able to change settings in order to mess with the denoising steps, in order to try to trade off quality and speed. And we see in the background we have this restyle avatar now, but I'm also able to use the functionality in Touch Designer in order to swap the background. So what I did just there was, previously the background was blurred, but because I'm compositing in real time in Touch Designer, I swapped the blurred background with something that is a little bit brighter. And that's another way that we can kind of just get a feel of, okay, we can see what Jinx looks like, roughly speaking, but what about a brighter background? What about a blurred background? What about a darker background? And all of this is in an effort to see, hey, how does this feel without committing to anything up front yet? So that was the starting point, but then was interested in going one step further, which is, that was a pre-recorded video and I can have that on loop, and that's cool. But what I really wanted was, I wanted a character that I could move around. I didn't want to be limited to looping a pre-recorded video. Unfortunately for me, this might have been a lot easier of a task if I had any experience in 3D or character animation. Sadly, I do not. Many of you probably have more experience than me. So that's kind of what led to going down this rabbit hole of, okay, like I'm willing to learn a little bit of Blender, but I'm obviously not going to become an expert in all of this stuff immediately. What can I use to help me out? Just for my understanding, how many people here know what character rigging and skinning is? Okay, all of you probably know way more about it than me, so you can feel free to just let me know if I say anything wrong. But my high-level understanding is that, okay, we want a character, and oftentimes we might start with a mesh, right? But now we need a way to basically move the character and have it, like us humans do, have an actual skeleton and move that skeleton away in a way that's anatomically correct. But then the tricky part is, how does this outer layer, the skin, so to speak, actually move and change based on the movement of those bones? Yeah, so that is a very labor-intensive task and requires a lot of craft and skill to do, all of which I have none of. But I came across this cool research work from Vast AI Research. I think it was published either earlier this year or last year, and it's called UniRig. And the basic idea behind UniRig is that you can take models that are actually trained to, given a mesh, predict what the skeletal structure should look like. So that's cool. I don't need to necessarily know how to create the skeleton myself. And then second, it helps you with this process called skinning. And that is basically trying to take that skeleton and understanding, when I move each of these joints, how should the mesh react to that? So it's really a suite of models that helps make these predictions. And that's what I got started with. But then I had no idea how to run this, right? So as is the case with any of these open source releases, some crazy person immediately released a node for it called ComfyUI UniRig. This guy, Pozzetti Andrea, I don't know if anyone knows him, but is like super prolific with all of these 3D models. I think he's basically spending every weekend just like releasing everything that academics launch, which is pretty awesome. So what he did was basically take all of that research, take these models, take all the code required to actually run this, and then packaged it into a ComfyUI node system, and then also shared an example workflow for how you can take those models, do that prediction for creating this skeleton and mapping that to the mesh, and then going through the process of converting that into a format that you can actually import into more traditional tools like Blender. So that was actually perfect, because I was definitely down to use Blender, but I don't know if I was going to make much headway learning how to do all the skeletal and skinning stuff on my own. So this is the workflow in action. And under the hood, what's happening is that there's a skinning model, there's a skeleton model, and there's a node that's going to load the mesh. So we're starting out with an example mesh already. And then the rest of the nodes are going to, one, use the skeletal model to predict the skeletal structure, and then two, take that alongside the example mesh and then do the skinning process so that you can end up with a skeleton and a mesh that can actually be rigged together. So at the end of this process, I think inference takes a little bit to run, so I will fast forward. Let's go all the way here. At the very end of the process, I end up with a file in my Comfy directory, which is a FBX file. So an FBX file is one of the popular file formats in order to take this like bundle of animation-related stuff and bring it to different tools. So now we're in Blender at this point. So me with my noob Blender skills basically knows how to click import FBX file and set up a camera. So what I'm doing here now is there's actually this add-on for Blender You'll recall previously that I was using something called Spout, and basically this lets us share everything that's happening in Blender with another program. So I have that set up. Let me fast forward here. And then now I'm basically focusing on the camera, and I have this rigged character. I can do very basic things with it because it's in 3D. I can kind of rotate it in different ways. I'm not gonna lie, I was astonished that this even worked at all. I know that there are detailed issues, like if you are a professional here, but you have to keep in mind, I've never done this before. So we're able to rotate it. We're able to, I think I tried moving its I can move its arms. So basically just trying to test out, like if I move the bones, is like the rest of the body moving with it? That's basically all that I needed. You can raise the leg. So now comes the actual real-time styling part. So I've used ComfyUI to help me through this burdensome process of how do I get something that I can actually move around in real time. But it's just this like very basic gray mesh. I want to kind of like see and prototype what this might look like in different scenarios. So that's what brings the scope tool that I talked about back into play. So you'll remember that I was using Spout to share frames, and I'm sharing those frames back with scope. So now what we have side by side with these two windows is my rigged character, and then basically a restylized version of it on the right in scope. So a thing to note here, this is running on my local GPU, so it's naturally going to be a little bit slower. And these models have a lot of work that need to be done still, so they need to get faster, higher quality. But I think you get the idea. This is meant to be shown for illustrative purposes. But what I can do is I can move this character around in real time now, and then have the real-time restylized version move with it. Not all of it is going to be great because we're going to get a little bit of hallucinations, but is it going to, I don't remember actually, is it going to lift its foot? It lifts its foot in the wrong direction, but it lifts its foot. Oh, I don't know what happened there. I think we do a little bit better if we fast forward. Okay, so it kicks out. Oh, I think it's a little bit better at the end. It lifts its hand. Okay, you can do it. You can do it. No, you have to lift the hand. Oh, there we go. There we go. So you can do stuff like that, right? Where you can use this rigged character on the left and then control the output on the right and have it be fully interactive and have it happen in real time. You can try out different styles too. So that one was using a very basic prompt that I had set up. And in this one, I'm going to use that arcane Laura that I showed once again. And same character rig. And now I'm going to pilot Jinx. So we can also swap. So this was a female prompt. We can swap to a male prompt. This will take a, there we go. So now we have a male arcane character that's restylized on top of this character rig. We can try lifting the foot again. It's interesting that I lift the foot forward and it thinks it should lift its foot backwards, but at least it's like sort of anatomically correct. That's not really anatomically correct. So it still has a little bit trouble dealing with these kind of like weird postures, right? We can rotate him into different positions. And then we can swap back to the female version as well. So that was kind of my journey in starting off not really knowing that I wanted to like try out like prototyping with like character styles, not really knowing where to start. And then I thought the cool thing here was we'd already been working on this tool scope, as I mentioned earlier. It's really exciting time for these real-time autoregressive causal models. They're only going to continue getting better. And we've mainly been using that in order to aggregate research. But with ComfyUI, we were able to pull in these new 3D models as well, put them together with traditional tooling like Blender. And at the very end, I was able to sort of prototype a character and animate it and try out different aesthetics. And that's definitely something that I probably wouldn't have been able to do a year or two ago. So that's a wrap. I have 2 QR codes here. If folks are interested in like this type of work and want to follow along, Scope is open source. You can check out the GitHub. So that's the QR code on the left. And then the last thing I'll say is that over Daydream, the project incubated by Livepeer, there's going to be an interactive video hacker program run at the end of the month that's basically focused on trying out weird and quirky fun ideas like this in this vein, and basically see, okay, as real-time models get better, what are some of these different creative workflows that are starting to become possible? So if you're interested in that, you can scan the QR code and check that out as well. Thank you.
Any questions from the audience?
I'm just like curious, like if you did it, what other experiments? Because I'm coming from an interest in touch designer, so just to see it is really cool. Aside from like Spout, which is I guess mostly like image information, or if you can send, let's say like hooking up a Connect or something like that, and send, what kind of data can you send from like touch designer to ComfyUI? So if you wanted to use skeleton data, for example, from an Xbox Connect. Like, if you haven't, it's fine. I'm just curious if you've done like stuff like that.
Yeah, so for this, so for the demos that I showed, we used Spout mainly because it was like the easiest way for image data. I think there are other options too for other types of data. So if you wanted audio too, I think you could use something like NDI. That's not supported today, but you know there are like software packages to help with this. For skeletal data, I'm not sure, but I'm sure there is like some protocol that could be used to share
OSC,
that.
do you know? Like,
yeah, maybe something like OSC. I'm not that familiar with it myself, but I think it should be possible.
Cool, thanks.
Maybe I could also chime in, having worked with Touch Designer and Unreal and skeletal skeletal pose tracking. Is there's a convention called Open Pose, which is essentially a way to like define a skeleton's rig and just like real-time bone positions. And if you can create a top in Touch Designer, like a texture that just has like these bones labeled with the corresponding colors according to the Open Pose standard, you could stream that into Comfy or hopefully Scope and use that to drive character animation. Yeah, it's basically like, think about like a skeleton, like a 3D skeleton, just the bare skeleton, no mesh, no actual character model on top, just the bones. That is an image that's color coded, like each bone is a different color, and that can get streamed over Spout, for example, to Comfy, to Scope, and then run through any video model that supports a control net with Open Pose.
Thank you. This was awesome, first of all. Super impressed with the work you've done. I'm curious to know if you've done any tests with like non-traditional or non-realistic proportions for characters and the rigs, like a Cocomelon style baby, for example, with a really big head but a smaller body, and how that, either if you have tested it, how that worked, or if you haven't, how you think it could fare in this pipeline.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I didn't personally do those tests, mainly because my interest was on some of this character stuff. If I had to guess, so the models that I showed here were, in the grand scheme of things, pretty small, so their world knowledge is a little bit more limited because they were exposed to less training data. I would guess that on their own, they would, I mean, it might be fun to see, but it might not exactly result in more, call it like interesting, coherent results if it's like very stream anatomical structures. But then I think the cool thing with the open source stuff is that, you know, one could always fine tune the model or train a LoRa if you have a particular view on like how you want that type of stuff to be handled. So I think that could be a cool way to handle that. Because it's open weight and it's open source.
Cool, thank you.
Hi. I've messed with Kriya's real-time system before. It just using like a live video input to generate. And one of the problems I found with it was that there wasn't any way to control the quality, and therefore there was you were stuck with the update speed. However fast it could update was how fast you got it. Do you have any way of controlling, like, you know what, I don't really need the background right now. Save those resources, give me quicker updates. Is there any way to control, or like character detail? Like, we don't need as much character detail right now, I want faster updates. Do you have a way to control like the inputs in that way to get, say, quicker, faster updates?
Yeah, so the most basic way that you could do that, and I think one of the reasons that you couldn't do it in Kriya, because the main way that they probably exposed it was via like a very nice, easy to use interface, and they didn't expose as many controls. The most basic thing that you could do is just adjust like the denoise that you have access to, because you have raw access to the model. So you can adjust the number of steps that it takes. So more steps, higher quality, lower speed, less steps, lower quality, higher speed. So all of that is like pretty fluid. So you can adjust that. I mean, at a certain point, it will. Yeah. Yeah. So it's more of like a experimental thing. So at a certain point, it certainly will break down. But you do have a little bit of leeway there, where you can say like, maybe normally you want 4 steps, and then if you want a little bit more speed, 2 generally works, but it'll just be lower visual fidelity. And then I think for bigger models as well, you'll have more of a spectrum too, where you can kind of play with more visual fidelity before it starts breaking down.
Any other questions?
How deterministic is the relationship between that final render that you're controlling with your 3D model? In other words, if you do the exact same motion from the model in Blender, will you get the exact same motion on the other side, including the error?
So roughly speaking, you can get close to reproducibility with the seed. So there, I mean, with all of these models, it isn't exclusive to like these models. You can basically say that this is like a fixed number that I'm going to start everything with, and then every time we do this generation, it'll start from this number. So it should be able to roughly reproduce. I say roughly because because of the nature of some of these calculations, it's still, unless you take additional fancy technical steps, it won't be completely deterministic just by nature of some of the mathematics happening under the hood. But roughly speaking, if you fix the seed, you should be able to get something pretty close if you have the same exact input with the same model and the same settings.
Got it. So then from a practical standpoint, what are you doing from that final model in terms of where does that go in a workflow of, say, hey, I'm going to make, you know, a scene play out. I have a commercial to make or whatever, and I'm going to have this scene play out, and I'm modeling out this particular character, right? Where do I go from there? Like, how do I take what I've learned from that to the next step of actually operationalizing it for, you know, making something 2 minutes long?
Yeah, so I think I'm of two minds here. I think there's a version of this. Well, actually, I think in your case, it sounds like you're most interested in actually getting to like a final output as opposed to pure like sketch and like pure prototyping. In that scenario, I think an interesting workflow might be like, let's say everything that I showed you is running, and then everything is being recorded, right? So every good detail, every bad detail, basically everything is being recorded such that you can always like scrub through it later on if you wanted to. I think one interesting thing to try is like at any point, because you have like a full archived history of it, you can scrub to moments that you like, clip that, and then like let's say that you only really liked what you saw for those like 3 seconds out of like an hour of doing this. You can take that clip and then have that be like the starting point for like maybe an actual shot that you want to do, and take that clip and maybe do a re-render with another model. But you liked basically the starting aesthetic and the starting structure of that clip, and then you treat this as like a process where everything's recorded and you can kind of like pick out only the things that you liked and use those as the starting points for more expensive, more time-intensive renders later on. That would be my instinct, but I mean, I would also pose a question to you how you would want to do it too, because I'm just spitballing. Cool. Oh yeah, I mean, I'd be curious, but yeah, we can talk afterwards if you want. Yeah.
All right. Let's thank Yandon for his presentation. It was great to see some Blender and some character rigging, and Touch Designer also mentioned we just hosted a Touch Designer meetup here yesterday, and so I would encourage you to continue checking out some of our other community events and programming. This is all a circle. So we'll give it a couple minutes to get set up for the next presentation, and we'll see you in a bit. connect, grab a seat, and settle in for our next presentation. So I'm very excited to introduce Alex Katzfee, who has been working on ComfyGit, which is a package and environment manager for ComfyUI that enables reproducible, version-controlled AI image generation workflows. So Alex is a developer who's worked with Comfy.org in the past and is currently a full-time open source developer contributing to the community. He joins us here today from sunny San Diego. So thank you for joining us here in New York. Let's give it up for Alex.
Yeah, hey everybody. Thank you so much to the organizers of ZeroSpace and Eric and Shuilong for flying me out here. Wow, that was loud. From sunny San Diego, so I could escape the warm sunny weather and come here and join you guys in the freezing cold in the winter. But no, I like it. It's a really nice change of pace. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you guys today about this tool that I've been working full time on for basically the past 5 or 6 months, called ComfyGit. So if you don't know who I am, my name on social media is acats. And so I've been working in the ComfyUI space off and on for the last 2 years. And so if you've ever used any of these nodes, if you've tried out the depth crafter nodes or the depth flow nodes, this is my Project Odyssey entry I made. And I've also been on Pers' stream. So if you know Pers, you can watch episode 88, and that was when I talked about my custom nodes. So yeah, this is just a sample of the work I did. I also, like Shuilong said, worked at Comfy.org briefly earlier this year. So I'm a big fan of ComfyUI when it works. So there's just nothing else that gives you that rapid experimentation. I worked in Python with diffusers a lot before I moved into ComfyUI. And it's just something about the node-based editor and the visual aspect and being able to drag and drop the noodles and letting go and seeing what nodes connect to that noodle just give you this sort of insight into what can I do, the functionality that I maybe wouldn't be able to see if I was just typing, in my text, editor with Python. And ComfyUI was always ahead of the game. They were always on top of supporting the latest models and having new functionality and having the best workflows. And so I'd be sitting there typing out my Python program. Oops. That's weird. And oh yeah, swap it. Just use this. Oh, cool. All right, let's get that sorted. There we go. So just yeah. Hello? There we go. Glad we got that figured out. Yeah, so ComfyUI is awesome. Open source, huge custom node ecosystem. We all love it. But it's got some problems. Yeah. So who here has had their ComfyUI install completely blown up because they installed way too many custom nodes or Python packages? Yeah, yeah, me too. So ComfyUI sort of emulates the early days of Python environments where everybody would just install all of their packages into one sort of monolithic Python environment. And then if you had a new application that you were working on and it needed some newer versions of those packages, if you had any old applications that relied on the old versions, then it would upgrade those and it might break those. And so we're seeing sort of this play out again today with ComfyUI. And so you get these sort of problems, especially if you break your environment, it's very hard to go back. It's very hard to try and work backwards and say, oh, what packages did I upgrade or downgrade? There's no real undo button. And I did a sort of analysis on all the custom nodes earlier this year on the registry, and I found that around 18% of them have a good chance of colliding. So that means any 2 nodes that you install have an 18% chance of just not being able to use one of their dependencies. So you can imagine as you start installing node after node after node, eventually you're going to get to a state where it's something is going to break. One of your old workflows might not work anymore, or your whole environment just might not run. It's one of the problems. And then sharing workflows. So I'm sure you're all familiar with this. You find a cool workflow on YouTube or on Civit that somebody recommends, and you pop it into ComfyUI, and you get this crazy mess. You get like errors, and the manager does a good job of helping you to install missing custom nodes. But unfortunately, models are still a little tricky. Sometimes the workflow authors will actually put a note with like, here's the URLs to all the models in this workflow. Go download it, go install it. So you gotta, it's up to you, it's up to the user to sort of like figure out some of these dependency issues. And it would just be nicer, if this was more automated. So these are some of the solutions I've seen and that I personally have tried to like help with this problem. So one of them is just having multiple ComfyUI installs on your machine. And this is probably one of the easier ways, but still doesn't provide a very good user experience. So the idea is you basically have multiple ComfyUI installs, and maybe your first install is specifically for like your WAN workflows, and then maybe your second one is with all your Quen workflows. And so by separating out your workflows and the dependencies, you sort of reduce the blast radius of any particular environment exploding, and then maybe you're working on a project for a client, and then that whole environment is toast, and you can't roll back. It kind of sucks. So yeah, this doesn't really and also this doesn't really help with sharing. So if you want to share the workflows, you still have the same problem. And then the other solution that I've tried is Docker. So putting your entire ComfyUI environment in a container. And the idea of this is it's basically like you get it working in these containers, and the idea is they allow you to maximize reproducibility, because you're almost like encapsulating your entire computer. Like you're basically putting all the system dependencies together in a box, and then you're shipping it to somebody else, and then they have to download, all 10 gigs or whatever of this giant image on their machine. And it's nice because it's much more likely to work. You only have to have Docker installed in order to run these images. But actually running Docker and getting Docker set up actually is a problem as well. So if you've ever tried to install Docker on Windows, you'll know that on Windows, you actually have to have WSL. So it's basically like the Linux running in Windows. So you got to get that set up first. And then you might have to install CUDA drivers for that specifically. So it's sort of a mess. And also it's just rebuilding. You have to rebuild after every change, and then it loads the image. So yeah, not the best solution. And then there's the cloud services, and these are fantastic. You've got Comfy Cloud out now, previous services like Run Comfy, Civit, and these all have their strengths, but at the end of the day, most of the time you're trading convenience for flexibility. So a lot of them will restrict you on the custom nodes you're allowed to have installed, the models, or maybe what GPUs you're allowed to use. And so I have like a 4090 system. I really wanted to be able to run things locally. And so I sort of was trying to figure out what's the best way I can get that to work, but then also have a way to use the cloud in certain ways. But if I want to use the cloud with my nodes and my models, then sometimes I don't have an option unless I spin up a run pod or do some more custom solution. And a lot of times these cloud services can also charge, have a big markup. Oh yeah, all good. Thank you. Oh, okay, cool. I was just worried about the echo. Okay, cool, thank you. All right, so now we're at Comfy Git. And so the thing about Comfy Git and Git in general is that it's a really good solution for version control of software. And so what I was always thinking of is, could I have a way to take my entire ComfyUI environment and version control it so that if something does break, I could just roll it back to an earlier state and then continue from there. Or maybe I'm working on some workflows and I'm trying an experiment and I want to see how that experiment turns out. And I spend a lot of time on a workflow, but it's not really working the way I want it to work, and it actually worked earlier. So maybe it'd be cool if you could branch from that earlier point and then keep working on that earlier version of the workflow or the environment. And so like this just hasn't really existed. And that was sort of the basis for where I was thinking like there needs to be a solution for this. So this is what I've been working on. So the core idea is you want to share the recipe and not the whole environment. You just want to share the aspects and the pieces of how to reconstruct an entire ComfyUI environment, including like all the dependencies for ComfyUI itself, all the custom nodes, and also where to get the custom nodes, like the URLs for those, the workflows that are part of your ComfyUI environment, and all of the models. And the models you can save via hash and also URL. So these are basically a list of references to how you can go install all these dependencies yourself, or have the tool be able to automatically install these dependencies without you having to go to Civit and find all these things yourself and install them. Yeah, so version control is nice. So yeah, like I was saying, the ability to commit the state of your workflow and dependencies over time allows you to have this sort of like timeline history of states that were working, versions of the workflow that maybe did interesting things. And right now, as you're working on a workflow, you might just lose all that, right? Like if you install too many custom nodes and your environment breaks, or maybe you just start experimenting, you throw too many nodes into one state. It's annoying to have to I guess people get around it now by just making copies of their workflow and then renaming it, and then saying like, oh, I'm gonna try this version. But it would be nice if there was just a way to say, oh, I wanna commit this state, right? And so that's something that Git, offers out of the box. And it also offers more collaboration, so you can natively push and pull from GitHub, and then people can see your workflows and be able to install them. So ComfyGit is this tool. So here's like a snapshot of the UI. So effectively, it's both a CLI tool, so you can download it using like pip install, but it's also a custom node. So you can download it via the manager. And so what it does is it builds on top of not only Git, but UV, which is this Python package manager. And what it does is very good at caching all of your dependencies, so that right now, if you've tried installing multiple ComfyUIs, you know that you have to wait like 2 minutes per install because it's installing PyTorch every single time. And so what this does is it basically lets you download like one PyTorch for your machine, and then every time you make a new environment, it just links to that same version of PyTorch. So you're not going and fetching PyTorch for every single environment. So it reduces the switching costs of having to set up new environments, which makes it easier to then like segment these out. So you can have your one environment for your WAN workflows, like I was saying, one for your Quen workflows, and do that in a much more managed and simple and efficient way. But like any tool, it's not a magic bullet. It's not going to solve every problem. So some problems it can't solve, for example, is if you've ever tried to install Sage Attention or Triton on Windows, you probably have experienced some issues with that. And that is because there's some dependencies that rely on a very specific configuration of hardware, like what your GPU is, and also your platform, whether you're on Windows or Linux. And not every one of these cutting-edge ML dependencies has compiled a wheel for all of the different possible combinations. And so you end up having to go to like GitHub and finding some wheel that some guy like decided to compile, and it's a huge rabbit hole that you might have to chase. And also if the authors upstream of a package delete the repo, or they put their models online and then they end up like deleting it later, then that could also be an issue if you're using these references. So, and version conflicts can still happen. This makes it easier to segment your environments out. So you can reduce, like I said, the blast radius, but you still have to be somewhat disciplined and make sure that you're not putting too much in any one environment. Otherwise, you could run into these sort of issues I was talking about earlier. All right, so let's see what it looks like to run through installing ComfyGit from the manager and using it in ComfyUI and see what that experience is like. And let's run this video. yeah, so you can see here, this is basically like your setup. So when you first install ComfyGit, you'll see this like startup menu. So you have the option to either create a new environment, or you can import an environment that somebody else has previously exported. So in this case, I'm going to create a new environment, and you'll have this nice UI here that shows you it's creating that environment. And then it also says, do you want to like switch to it? And then you can switch to it directly from the UI. And so what this just did is it just handed off my existing ComfyUI install to another ComfyUI install, but I didn't have to leave the UI. So before, you'd have to like maybe open up your terminal and then go in and say, you know, shut down ComfyUI, like start up the next one and do all this like work. But now it's all just sort of managed by ComfyGit. Oops. Oh, go back. There we go. So skipping ahead. Yeah, so say you have a workflow like this that you've already created and you are happy with the state of it. You can then commit the change with this sort of menu here, and then everything will update. It'll say looks good, you've committed all your changes, and this is where you can go and actually specify a GitHub repo. So you can go to GitHub, create a new repo, add it to this Git remotes list, and then that's what you can push your commits to. So similar flows if you've ever used Git and GitHub. So here I just pushed it, this workflow and all of the dependencies associated with it, and I can see in GitHub now that same commit is present, and these are all the different files. Essentially, it has your workflows, it has the manifest, it has all the resolved dependencies that are needed to set up this workflow on a different machine. So somebody else can then go to your repo on GitHub, copy the link, go into their ComfyUI environment, open ComfyGit, go down to import, and then slap in the URL that they just got, and this will pull the changes, and it will show you a preview of what you're about to import. So you can see, oh, this is going to import this workflow, these models, and these 5 custom nodes. And if you're happy with that, you can do some more configurations. You can choose whether or not you want to install all the models or only like the most important models, or if you don't want to have any of the models downloaded at all. So you have some configuration that you can do. And then we're going to hit create, and this is going to go ahead and do all of that work that I said. It's going to basically download all the dependencies, download the models, make sure they're in the right places, extract the paths to the right location, and then when you switch to that environment, it should all just be set up in the workflow. Like here, there's the workflow, and then it's all already set up. So all the paths are set, all the models are already set up. You don't have to do any like the searching. You don't have to like download it. It should just all be present. And then you can do any kind of configuration you want with the workflow. And hopefully, if everything goes right, it'll just run. And it did a really weird effect on my logo there, but yeah, so that is the main flow. And there's like one other thing that I wanted to show since I still have some time, which is that I went on an absolute tear with Claude for the last like 2 weeks and have just been adding more features to this UI because I can now. So one of the things that I added, and one of the things that I think is really powerful, is you can actually go to this deploy menu and go to RunPod. And if you've used RunPod, it's basically a service which lets you rent computers. You can rent GPU, powerful GPU computers, and then set up ComfyUI there and then run it. So if you have like an upscaling workflow or you just want to have like something running in parallel, you can go spin up a RunPod and have that running. But it's been sort of a pain to also do that manually, and a lot of people have their own process for it. They've created scripts for it, but it's just not very like user friendly. So I added a menu where you can basically grab a API key from RunPod, throw it into this menu. You can configure what kind of GPU you want. So in this case, I have a 4090. It'll tell you how much per hour that specific GPU costs. and then you specify which repo you want it to pull from. So in this case, I push to that depth flow example repo. So it will use that as the source to pull that into the run pod environment. So when it's spinning up the computer, it's just going to automatically download ComfyGit, run the import process, and then in theory, it'll just all work, and you'll be able to use ComfyUI. So you can see here, you have like your deployment. This is just like an overview. It'll warn you if you have any missing models that you still need to add a URL for. And then this is what it looks like when you have a running run pod instance in the menu. And in this case, had to restart. There we go. Oh yeah, I remember it. This is like the video that I pulled up because I had extra time and didn't edit earlier. But yeah, there we go. So it's running. So it works. And then I also have a node pack that I'm working on, which allows you to, if you use ComfyGit to spin up all these different instances, it's like, well, how do I orchestrate them? I'll have some nodes which basically allow you to specify in the node the URL of your run pod, and then you'll have, let's say, maybe like 3 or 4 of these nodes that can run in parallel. So you can imagine if you're trying to upscale multiple videos, or you're trying to generate like 4 WAN videos at the same time, it would be extremely powerful if you could run those all simultaneously instead of having to like either manually go to each run pod and hit run, or do it sequential on a single machine. So that's in the works. I actually have that coming up. I'm going to be releasing it alongside the code for ComfyGit. And let me go down here. And yeah, that's a wrap. Thank you. I have, yeah, that's the organization actually where I keep all the code. So if you want to go take a look, I have ComfyGit there, which is the CLI tool and the extension, but you can also just go to through the ComfyUI manager, like I said, and download it directly there. And then those are my social links as well. So thank you. Oh, and any questions?
Hey, hey, hey. If you don't mind, I've got about 152,000 questions for you.
Oh my God.
First of all, I'm looking around. There's no children. Holy shit. Holy shit. That's incredible. Listen, I have a couple questions for you. One, I do the multi-ComfyUI bit. I'm on Linux. And what I do is I go into each of my ComfyUIs and I delete the inputs and outputs folder, because I back out and I create a symlink so that way all copies of my instance of Comfy have the same inputs and outputs folder. So for all 5, I'm sharing all the inputs. Does this work the same way where?
It works exactly the same way.
Yes. Holy shit.
What you just said is exactly how it works. Yeah, every time
Yeah.
you create an environment, it will symlink the inputs. It'll have it in its own subdirectory.
I feel like we're going to high five later.
Okay.
Holy shit. That's super cool. Second thing, if you run a GitHub repo, does it require that repo to be public or can it be private?
So you mean like if you were like the licensing on it, or?
No, like if I'm pushing and pulling to GitHub, but I want it to be like on my private repo,
Yeah.
are there instructions where it can push to private given I provide the credentials or my key or something?
Yes. So there's a menu in ComfyGit in the panel directly in like the deploy tab, so that you can add your GitHub token. So if you have a token specifically for that repo that you create, you can slap in the token, and then if you're on that run pod, you'll have access to your local or private repos. So
Sure.
this is great for like organizations, or if you don't want to just publicly expose all your code and workflows.
Okay, one last question, and then I'll shut up and hopefully I can bother you later. When you say that it's linking the custom nodes, is it linking the custom node that's currently like pulling from the GitHub page because here's a perfect example. Seed VR2 has gone through 2 iterations. Guess what? Josh likes the first one. I don't like the second one. So thankfully, I have pulled down and I have stored the first version of Seed VR2 because it has a node that I actually like that he got rid of in the second version. So if I'm sharing my instance, is it including the custom nodes that I really have, or is it just checking against like what would be on the manager, and there's a potential that it would pull down like the V2 version of a custom node and not the V1 one that I'm actually working on? And the follow-up would be, what if you're a guy like me who writes his own custom nodes? Am I screwed about sharing some of custom nodes that I've actually written in Python?
No, that's a really good question. So this is something I thought about a lot as well, because I'm also have been developing my own custom nodes. So the main thing is that I didn't want to package custom node code directly in the manifest or in the package that you export, partially because of all the security concerns that come with that. And I know there's like some other tools that have come out that sort of do that. Docker actually does that. It's like you're packing all your code and sending it to somebody else. But the way that this is able to be so lightweight is that we're doing these references, and what you can do is not only specify the custom node that you want, but the source. So you can say, oh, this custom node comes from the registry and it's version like 3.5, so it's got its own like hash essentially. And you could also say, or I want a custom node that comes from GitHub. So maybe you forked the project and you've got your own version of it going on. You could have the reference to that. And like I said before, you can specify your own GitHub credentials. So then you can say, I want this specific commit of that custom node, which I worked on. And yeah, so you can do that.
We also train a lot of LoRa's here at ZeroSpace. So it wouldn't handle that, like when we're creating custom LoRa's.
So
then you know what I'm saying, like
yeah. So for model references, so it will hash the model locally and index it, and then you have to have a way for the system to be able to download that model. So you might either have a database of models hooked up to all these different machines, like you have some external like models folder and it's linked. You can specify the path to your models directory, and it will automatically index all of those. So if you have the model available, somebody else can then, on their machine, use the same model, basically, because it'll find it. It'll find it in your file system for you. But also, if you want it to be downloadable by the public, you need to make, obviously upload it somewhere so that they can download it publicly.
Yeah, I actually you answered my question, which was like, how do we download models from a different repository, or like maybe an S3 bucket or Backblaze bucket? Reason being that, sometimes if you just let the model download from the default source, it might be a slow server, or the internet might be having a bad day, whatever it is, it might take forever. So if you're able to like specify your own, that'd be great for just deploying on the cloud, on different run pods or whatever other cloud service you're using, right?
Absolutely, and I've talked to Greg from Oxen, and there's
Awesome.
Potential future in integrating their model hashing system with ComfyGit, and that would be awesome because then you could, for example, take all of your training input images and hash those, so you could create like a commit that has not only the state of the input images, but also the checkpoints. So you can imagine you're taking a commit of your entire like snapshot of a training run, and then that would be fantastic for researchers who want to go train their own models to say, oh, look, just pull from that commit. It has all the exact same training data. It should give you exactly the same output models if you hit play. That's the goal. So yeah.
Sweet. Awesome. Other questions? Well, I know ZeroSpace will be using this tool quite a bit, so.
In a few minutes.
Good, I'm glad to hear. We'll talk after. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, so that's our speakers for today. Hope you enjoyed them. Now we're gonna, usually at the end of these, we like to do community shout-outs or projects. So if you have something you're working on, you wanna share it, or you're looking for collaborators on a project, feel free to come up. We'll hand you the mic. If you wanna plug in a laptop, we can do that too. And we would love to hear from you and see what you all are working on.
Hello, my name is Eris. Some of you guys know me and some of you don't. Big ComfyUI kind of community person, been around for a while. But prior to that, I was an artist, a traditional artist, and I started adopting AI about 3 years ago in my work. And as I started to get like deeper and deeper into it, going from images to like music to full films, I realized like it was really hard for me to find events and like to keep up. And to remember to hit those competitions that everybody's doing. And I started to realize like this information was everywhere, all over the internet, and it was like a full-time job trying to keep up. I thought, well, what could solve this problem? Like, I'm doing all this work, I show up, do all the community things, and I see all these cool people doing cool stuff, and I'm working a lot to create like all that knowledge and information, and like, how do I share that? Recently, I started asking people if that might help them. And especially in the space where you might want to make money with your skills. So I've been aggregating it all, and I got some good feedback from you guys and some of the other people around for kind of a network that has all of this information in one place. I'm happy to say that over the last couple of months, I've been working really hard, and I'm very, very close to launching. Right now, I'm looking for those few users who want to go and jump in with me. Kind of no commitment, really. Like, I've got a free level account. Jobs, events, ways for you guys to connect with each other, because it is a network, and I'm about to launch. So for those of you who don't know or haven't connected with me, I'll be in the back, and I would love to grab an email address and invite you to join me over the next couple weeks as I launch this thing. And I know that we just had Black Friday, and I wasn't quite there with the launch, so I think I might have some like special deal or free credits or something. I need a little feedback on what you guys might need from me. That's about it. I'll be in the back. I can tell you all about it, and I'd love to meet some of you cool people. Thanks.
Thank you, Eris.
Hello. My name is Brian Fountain. I'm here sort of showing kind of a preview of a project that myself and Jason Kinde, who's part of this, this community, is also doing. And then sound, if I wanted to do sound, is that done through here? Or is it getting carried on this? Or do I need to do something special? Okay. This product is called GenPro Studio. The general idea is that it's aimed at, well, there we go. On the air, it's on the other side. This is GenPro Studio. It's aimed at mid-tier to enterprise animation studios, and the general idea is sort of meeting the industry where it's at and kind of taking them where they need to be, sort of assuming that eventually a lot of these workflows will move into generative technologies. And so I'll just give you a quick rundown of this particular property. So this is called Planet America. It's about a ragtag group of aliens from the planet Boron who've been sent to Earth with the mission of conquering it. Unfortunately, the scouting team let them down, and so they were very underprepared. You can see here we sort of got a list of assets for the characters, and then some locations. I'm going to sort of walk you through some of the app, but first I thought it'd be fun to start a little demo here. So this is aimed at younger ages. So what is something you wished you knew when you were younger? Some topic you knew about. skydiving. Okay. Chase 1 is our hero, believes that skydiving is the best way to conquer the planet. The rest of the crew is unsure. All right, so the platform is not necessarily designed to do AI writing. This is more for the demo purposes. It's actually optimized for teams that already exist, have writers, have illustrators, have editors, all these sort of things. So keep that in mind. This is just really for kind of fun to sort of show with what you can do in an automated way. So right now it's sending it and building basically a 90-second script using our characters. Now, as many of you know, if you've worked with ComfyUI, we can basically train LoRa's on the style of this IP and on the characters. We can intelligently parse the script, and then we can map that script back to these characters that already exist within the system. So if we look here, we've got the script, and it's written this little 90-second thing. We can kind of preview some of these lines.
I have discovered the secret to conquering planet America. Skydiving.
Captain, that looks terrifying. Why would humans throw themselves out of perfectly good aircraft?
So this is, basically a way to sort of read the script. This is actually generating based off of the actors that this is modeled after. So when you're temping it with the talent that you're using for the project. And then we can start looking at the shots. Now, I do have a version of this that is trained on our style, but it takes a little bit longer to render. So the general idea is to, I'm just sort of using a very quick render technique. So you'll see a bunch of different animation styles. Now, it's already done basically all of the storyboards for this. And so we can actually just go sort of directly to an animatic by clicking the preview button here. I'll give it a second to load up some of these assets. And you can kind of see there at the bottom, it's already working on generating the videos. That's not the normal workflow that you would go through. You'd look at the storyboards, you'd work them and pre-approve them and that sort of stuff. But this is sort of give you a quick way to understand like how the story is sort of progressing here.
Crew, I have discovered the secret to conquering planet America.
Captain, that looks terrifying. Why would humans throw themselves out of perfectly good aircraft?
Think about it, Bex. We drop from the sky.
So you can sort of get a really quick sense of the pacing there. I have a sort of asset manager here. If I want to look at some of these lines, I can see here.
But Captain, they wear parachutes. Do we have parachutes?
So if I'm not happy with that while we're working, like let's just say we're working through the rhythm of the sketch and I haven't sent it to the performer yet, we can re-record this line here. But Captain, they wear parachutes. Do we have parachutes? So we can stop. I'll upload that. Now, that's currently like in my voice, but what we can do here is we can convert it to the model of the actor. Give it a second.
Do we have parachutes?
There might have been some feedback. Yeah, that's not how it normally records. But you can imagine how that would get mapped properly back to it. So that's sort of what you can do in the prototyping stage. Obviously, once you've approved the script, you can just send out the recordings to the talent to have them record it. They don't have to go to studios, because if you have high quality samples of their voices, they can just record it with their own tonality and prosody, and you can map it back to the model of their own voice. So most of your talent could just record from their house or a quiet room in their house, preferably without feedback. So that's the sort of quick view. And then we can see here we've got one of 23 videos, so that's going to keep working. But I'll show you sort of an existing project that sort of is more in line with sort of where things are at. And you can see we've got different prompts. This sort of flow is, I won't show you the flow because it looks a lot like the other asset makers, where you tell it the scripts and the directions and all that sort of stuff. So it's not going to be that impressive. But you can kind of see here, previewing this. This is still a work in progress, but like this kind of gives you a little bit more of an idea of like where this could be. I don't know if you can bump that audio up at all. I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit here.
Sir, we have landed on the surface of planet America.
I want a full systems check immediately. Navigation.
Navigational systems are operational, Captain.
Metrics.
All metrics are proportional, sir.
Histrionics.
Squabbledoodlix.
Good. Red swirly thing.
Red swirly thing. Swirling, sir.
Very good, then.
So this is not necessarily meant to get you to a final edit. It's really about sort of generating all of the pieces that you will basically export. It'll ship it with an EDL, so the editor can sort of bring that into their nonlinear editor very quickly and just start doing the final mix down of the different assets there. There's some fun like synergies here, which is when you design your setting, you can design the ambient sound of that setting at the same time. And so now we can just prototype with the ambient environment sound mixed into it. There's all these kinds of fun little things, and obviously you can build sound effects as you need them. But yeah, this is sort of like only the second time that Jason and I are showing this publicly. It's getting very close to having sort of a release. And we are looking for hopefully like small teams who would like to help us pilot it. Specifically, we'd like people who have sort of an illustrator in the mix, who are interested in using live talent and that sort of thing. But that's it. And then, yeah, thanks.
Hey, Brian. That was a impressively smooth live demo, I will say. Cool. Anyone else who would like to share anything they're working on? All right.
I got like a warning. Yeah. I did a test. I'm not loud. Can everybody hear me? Okay, I'm loud as hell. I just did like a review and test of a video upscaler called Livepeer that claims to be a diffusion-based upscaler. I ran a bunch of tests on it. I didn't think it looked great. I started downloading my tests. And again, this is like a service you're supposed to pay for. When I was downloading my tests, all of my file outputs were named automatically animate diff. Which implied to me that they were just using animate diff to, make this. So the best I could figure, everything that it was outputting was just a Comfy workflow with a web GUI on it that they were charging you like 5-to-1 GPU time on. So keep an eye out for like company with 200 followers on Twitter that has a revolutionary new upscaling model or whatever. It's probably a Comfy workflow somebody's just white labeling and trying to charge you 5x for. And like if you've got friends that don't know Comfy stuff and they hear about, oh, there's this new thing, like take a look and be like, hey, I think that might just be like an open source model they're running and charging you too much cash for. So there, public service announcement. How about that? There you go.
Yeah, we're in the era of the AI wrapper companies, well said. All right, so thank you. That's all we have for tonight. Feel free to mingle and connect. You can follow other events that we do at luma.com/ZeroSpace. We have an event tomorrow. It's a little bit outside of our normal scope. It's someone talking about the occult, but it is an event that we're hosting here. It should be interesting. And then otherwise, for our regularly scheduled events around Touch Designer, ComfyUI, Unreal, looking forward to hosting more of those in January 2026. So happy holidays, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight to the December meetup, and enjoy the rest of your evening.